It's 10 o'clock. This is the time when those other channels tend to tell you what you should be thinking. But this is where you have your chance to speak to the rest of the United Kingdom through GBViews. On The Big Question tonight, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the legendary rock star Roger Daltrey. He is, of course, the co-founder and lead singer of the rock band The Who, whose hits include My Generation, Pinball Wizard and You Better You Bet, one of Britain's best. The Who, of course, considered one of the most influential rock bands of the 20th century, have sold over 100 million records worldwide. Roger is also an acclaimed actor and film producer, having been Golden Globe nominated for his performance in the 1976 rock opera Tommy. But he remains a political activist too. He supported Britain leaving the European Union, and he's been a critic of woke culture too. He's also a philanthropist for the Teenage Cancer Trust. And Roger, it is great to have you on The Big Question. I thought it was so appropriate to have you here because no one in pop culture is more synonymous with the Union Jack than you. And of course, we love the Union Jack on GB News, Roger.
Yes, you seem to, yeah. I just feel, there's so much made of the flag today, but as far as we were concerned, my computer's going mad here. As far as we were concerned, it's just such a great graphic. I think of all the flags that are out there, the Union Jack has just got something. The Union flag has just got such a strong graphic, and that's what we appreciated. It was not jingoistic. It was anything like that. It just looked so great on a stage. So now all this stuff's going on, about the union splitting up and all that. I really don't know what to make of it. I don't know. I'm not sure whether this popularism has worked. So who knows? Anyway, let's not get political. There's too much grief in the world tonight.
Indeed, no, you're completely right. So look, the great thing is, Roger, is
next week, and now we're not going to.
Well, look, the great thing is our viewers have lots of questions for you. I have no idea what they've asked. So let's go first to Tim, who sent in this video.
Hi, my name is Tim. I've got a question for Roger Daltrey. If he was to write a song now, in these days, politically motivated, what would the first chorus be?
Oh, so sorry, Roger. Tim immediately asked a political question. What's your new political anthem going to be about?
I think it'll be "Follow Me, I'll be right behind you."
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Follow me, I'm right behind you.
Explain. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just I don't. I would hate to. Who would want to be Prime Minister today? Let's be honest. I mean, who would want to make a decision where you're going to please anywhere near most of the people most of the time? You're going to upset huge swathes of the population with any decision you make. So a nightmare situation for the man. I feel sorry for him. I think he should have a year off because he got through that disease. So obviously, unlike me and you, Dan, you haven't had that disease. You don't, that virus. He knows the effects of it, so he's obviously got more fear than perhaps people that haven't.
Yeah, no, I did have it actually, Roger, around the same time as Boris last year when he was in hospital, and it's a nasty virus. I don't dispute that for 1 second. So
yeah, he had it quite badly though, didn't he?
He did, no, of course, and he was hospitalised. So you think potentially his political decisions have been very influenced by what he went through?
I'm not sure, because he's human. He will obviously. That will weigh on his decisions. I think the issue becomes really more that perhaps they've handed power to science, and of course, science is very reluctant to let it go. Some of the figures do puzzle me, and some of the language puzzles me. We no longer have died of COVID. It's died of 28 days of being tested with COVID. Now, they might have been killed in a car crash. But if they were tested 28 days ago with COVID, that's what's in the death figures. So there are all kinds of numbers in these graphs we kept being shown, which now the public must be like looking at wallpaper. that you've had on the wall too long. There are numbers missing from it to let us make a real decision.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that actually that you point that out, because the World Health Organization has now suggested that a lot of these COVID deaths should actually be reclassified, because of course, you know, my great auntie Celia, absolutely loved her. You know, she's down as one of those COVID deaths, but actually, you know, she died of dementia. That's the reality. So we potentially have to look at that classification.
But there are other issues that people haven't considered. I know there have been people killed in car crashes, but they were diagnosed with COVID on entrance to the NHS, and their death certificates say died of COVID.
Which is
and that's
nuts.
okay, but
I mean, that's mad.
When you come to the insurance, it's really bad.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a huge issue for some people.
Well, look, it's obviously been a big day, Yeah, it's been a big day. So Luke Cornier wants to ask you about the events of today. Have a listen to this, Roger.
My name is Luke. I have a question regarding the lockdown debates which you've been going on about on your show today and over the last few days. Will this be the last time that they are lifted? Is this the true Freedom Day that you have spoken about? Or is this another facade, another government spin, another tale that we've been told that will ultimately lead in another lockdown once another variant comes along in the future? So are you sure that this is the last lockdown regardless of the 4 weeks? Because that ultimately does decide whether we should take 4 weeks now to have freedom whilst we can, or whether that 4 weeks will really mean that this is the end of lockdown restrictions forever.
Well, I mean, I have to be honest with Luke, Roger, I don't feel it is the end. Do you?
Well, it's not the end of the virus. You know, we're not going to eradicate this virus. It'll be with us for ages, but we've learnt to deal with it. Look at when it first came out. They were dealing with it as though it's a pulmonary illness, you know, like pneumonia. And obviously, it took a doctor from New York working on the front line to recognise that, in actual fact, in quite a lot of the people out there, that they were on ventilators, the actual ventilators were killing them. So, you know, we've learnt so much from the first lot, the first wave. And again, that's not kind of being considered in these numbers. And the numbers in the NHS, what really are they who are actually in hospital only with COVID? I'm confused with that. And that's the science. That's not the government, that's the science that they're following. But it's not making sense to me. But there again, I'm not pretending to be Reign of Britain. I'm just a stupid rock star. Oh.
Well, I disagree with that, because you're a man of so much experience, of course, Roger. But I was fascinated to know if you agreed with Andrew Lloyd Webber, who said he would be prepared to be arrested if the government tries to shut down his new production of Cinderella. Do you like that sort of fighting talk from another industry legend like yourself?
If I was Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think I'd probably be the same. I mean, because he's got all those theatres, he can't make them work at 50% capacity. The economics do not add up. They're getting very little help from the government. Our industry, the music industries, had, apart from the venues, some of the venues have been given some help. But the industry itself, the people, have been given very, very little. And it's on its knees. And there are huge issues that they're failing to address for the future. And the main one is the question that we cannot any longer get insurance for something like COVID. For COVID, you will not get insurance. Now, our business works. A promoter, like Michael Ebis, who runs Glastonbury, he will probably lay out excess of 25, 30 million pounds just to get Glastonbury staged, but pay the upfront monies. Now that's a huge risk if the government can just say, "Oh, sorry, we're closing you down again," and you can't get insurance. And all we've asked for a long time, and there's been committees and everything in the Houses of Parliament. We've asked them, could you just stand a guarantee that if you do close us down, those people that have laid out that money and can show that they've laid out money will be reimbursed, because it's your responsibility if you do that.
Yeah.
They're the problems our industry faces Otherwise, I can't see anyone willing to lay out 50 million.
Well, indeed. And I mean, Roger, you have also been the driving force behind a lot of the Teenage Cancer Trust work. Of course, you started those brilliant concerts at the Royal Albert Hall. I think, gosh, it was 1990, wasn't it? But this pandemic, I believe, has left the Teenage Cancer Trust badly financially hit. So you've got that financial concern, but then you also have the concern of the teenagers who are suffering from cancer, you know, the worst thing a teenager can go through. And you've talked about how much more difficult these COVID regulations make those cancer battles for those young folk.
Well, I don't know the situation in hospital in the NHS at the moment, but I know in the first wave, there were teenagers completely isolated, not even being able to see their parents. I mean, it's an horrendous situation.
Wrong. Yeah.
Cancer at any age is a horrible, horrible disease. But obviously, you know, I can't imagine what it must be like to be 15, 16, 17, 18 years old and meet someone that you have, you know, a really rare, because they usually are very rare cancers in teenagers, and they're usually incredibly aggressive, and they suffer most from late diagnosis. So on all levels, they're the fuzziest end of the lollipop. And all I know is that our main thing with the Teenage Cancer Trust is that we are the only age-appropriate thing in the whole of the NHS service, which is specifically for teenagers and young adults up to the age of 25 with cancer, so they can be with their peers. Every children's hospital has a nursery with teddy bears and all that stuff. What is wrong with giving these youngsters something, you know, these teenagers and young adults, something that they can identify with, where they can communicate in their language, because they're no longer like teenagers used to be. They're very, very different than they were 40, 50 years ago. They're like from another planet, you know, they really are. And it seems that it's all weighted in for the little children and the older adults like me, the old farts. And even in the research, it's like that. Most of the researchers are researching cancers in the older age group because that's where the numbers are. But that doesn't make it right. No. Most of the cancer research money is charitably raised. So it's kind of, it's a minefield, but someone needs to pipe up. Someone needs to break the silence.
Yeah.
They deserve better, this young age group. They deserve more.
They do, and that's why it's so important the Teenage Cancer Trust will keep fighting that fight. Our next question, Roger, is from Rob Sharp. He is a pub landlord in Hull.
Roger, if you was in a modern day group today, which band would you like to be the lead singer of today?
Dan was talking over you.
Oh, sorry, did we not hear that?
Yes, I'm as deaf as a post, mate, you know.
I'm so sorry. He asked what band would you like to be the lead singer of today, you know, if you had to look at a cool band today.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be any other singer than I am. I mean, you know, Who music is very, very different than anything else that's out there. It gave me the opportunity to find my own platform, and I'm very happy being there.
Yeah, you don't need to be in another band.
Music for me is something very, very different. Equally, I wouldn't mind being in a really good pub band like the Rolling Stones, because Who music was great to fight to, but it wasn't good to dance to.
Very good point. Look, speaking of young people, Roger, in a different sense, you have been a critic of woke culture, as am I. And interestingly, you think that the younger generations could actually be stifling themselves creatively. You've said it's terrifying, the miserable world they're going to create for themselves. I mean, anyone who's lived a life and you see what they're doing, you just know that it's a route to nowhere. Explain a little bit what you meant by that in terms of woke culture today.
You know, well, I just feel, where's humour? Well, they've forgotten about humour. If you're going to micromanage every emotion you ever have, and you're, live in fear of upsetting someone, of being objectionable, we all have the right to be objectionable to anyone we meet, you know. And if you're offended, fine, get over it, then get a life and move on. That's not to say that the woke thing hasn't brought up some very good points. I mean, Colston in itself is a good example. I mean, they threw it in the lake, the statue, or in the river. Brilliant. That's what they wanted to do. They threw it in the river.
So you agreed with that statue falling?
For the uneducated, like me, because I don't care about Colston. He built a really nice few halls around the country, which we played. But I didn't care about the man, really. But obviously, when you look back through his history, there is some really nasty things there. So woke isn't all bad, but it's when you make it like your biggest driving thing and become fanatical in it in your life, I could just see it making a world of misery. I mean, we were once slaves to the Romans, but we don't. How far does this thing go back? And today, there's probably more slavery in the world than there's ever been. It's not the same kind of thing that we were doing in imperialistic Britain. I agree, but in some of the countries, it is. It's such a difficult subject. But like I say, I think Colston is a great example of how it can work, because they've now put the statue in a museum, covered in paint, and history carries on, and it's not being ignored. So I think that's really good.
Do you think that works? But what about when they come for Churchill, Roger? What about then? What about when they want Churchill to fall?
Have you ever met anybody who's perfect in your life?
No.
Have you? I haven't met anyone who's perfect.
Certainly not.
You know, these things have to be got over. It's all a balance, isn't it? And, you know, the people throwing stones in glass houses need to be careful of breaking windows. Otherwise, it's a life of misery.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. It's interesting, though, Roger, because we see this culture going into lots of different areas, and I know you're an avid football fan, you support Arsenal. Obviously, the big football story of the week has been the booing of the England team taking the knee at the Euros. What do you think about taking the knee as a concept, and do you agree that the fans have a right to boo, or should they just shut up and allow the England team to take the knee before their game if they want to?
This is a very difficult one because it can be taken, you know, there has been, and there still is racism in sport. Shouldn't be there. I've never met anyone who would disagree with that statement. But sadly, they are there, and I think it's probably good that they are doing it, because in some of the continental countries, it's a lot worse than it ever was here. I do know that, and I think the footballers would agree. But then, if it goes on too long into the next season, for instance, I think it is in danger of becoming virtue signalling. You've made the point.
Yeah.
Find other ways to do it. Otherwise, again, it becomes like the wallpaper. You just go, oh, well, that's that. And the meaning of it gets lost. And you should never let the meaning of what it was get lost. We should all remember that. That's fine. So it's a very difficult balance. But they've made the point, and I think they should carry on the point through this because of the European countries. And like I say, there are countries out there where racism is quite a very big problem.
No, indeed.
Not richly.
And what are our chances, Roger? Well, what are England's chances, I should say?
Same as everybody else. Someone's going to win. I think we've got a very strong team this year, for once, with really good backup. It's going to depend on injuries. I mean, look at Scotland today. I really felt for them without, you know, their winger, our wonderful Arsenal player.
The man, don't look to me for the answer to that question, Roger.
It stirs people up too much. You can stir people up with politics, and it's just a bit of a jiving in the pub, you know. But football gets serious.
Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about Nicola Sturgeon. We'll save that for another day. But Roger Daltrey, the Who legend, thank you so much for being here on The Big Question tonight. It was an absolute joy, Roger. Thank you so much.